Hello, my energetic elephants. Today I'm painting better than the box art. So here's the situation. I have a couple little orcs who demand of me certain tributes. Tributes like models um, from my horde, and now they've even demanded that I paint them. And no simple task of just slapping on some colors or something like that. No, no, no. They expect me to meet or exceed the box art. It's unreasonable, the demands these little orcs make. So here's what I'm up against. Um, yeah, wish me luck. So let's start here by looking at the blue. Now the blue on the box art is very clean, very precisely applied, but it is very flat. So if I want to exceed on the blue armor, I'm going to have to dial up the contrast. Darker shadows, brighter highlights. Not really sure how I'm going to do that at this point, but I figured doing some purple shadow colors would be a good place to start. So I'm just going to hit all these areas. I'm going to call this more of my primer as opposed to the gray primer that I started with, but just trying to get a feel for all the volumes on the model, set the shadows, and just get kind of acquainted with it. And now going back in with white, just trying to set some of the general environmental light, generally from above. The tentative plan at this point is to still do some OSL effects from the sword and the braziers, the torches behind him. Not really trying to hit that right now, just getting a general idea of where I want the lights to be. Just believe this is just a white ink. So here we are. Now the obvious choice now is to use some ultramarines blue and just start on the boot, and I did not load the brush enough. If you don't know how to apply contrast to flat areas, it's flood the area with a bunch of paint and then kind of soak it up, make sure there's not excessive pooling. And just look at the blue armor. We'll get to the gold here in a second, but it looks really flat, so that's not going to do. So taking white blue from Pro Acryl, and I'm just hitting all of the brightest spots. I'm not being precise here. I'm not trying to do any fine edge highlights. I'm just trying to hit in between all this filigree and hit the blue spots. Try to just punch up the color. Ultramarine blue is obviously for ultramarines, but if I'm going to exceed the box art, I'm going to have to get a little bit punchier with these colors. So around the face here, I almost completely cover up all the blue, the ultramarines blue that I just already laid down, but I want to draw as much attention to this area as I can. Same with this left shoulder pad. The white ultramarine symbol will draw a lot of attention already, but I want the blue there to also pop. Now with these fingers, I am really heavy-handed. You can just see I'm not trying to be careful, just getting those top edges, top facing sides and the edges, and not being careful at all, because I'm going to come in here with Talisar blue, and just this color is much brighter, much punchier, much more punchy, yeah, and will just help sell blue armor much more. than just the Ultramarines blue alone. Now I will say that this looks a lot better. It is much more vibrant, and it is a much better look to me. Maybe isn't quite an Ultramarines blue now, but I think that it sells a lot more. And I'll just cover every surface here. And as I'm doing this, I want to say that I don't show what I do to finish the rest of this. It is pretty blocky, and I want to refine it, so I do come back in and do much more refined edge highlights and more deep purple in the shadows. But you can see that as the model progresses. For no other reason, because it just kind of felt right, I do 3 drops of Yandin yellow, 1 drop of Griff Charger orange, and whatever that brown was. I can't. Snakebite leather? Yeah. So, how I came up with this mix, I don't really know. It just kind of felt right. I played with it a little bit and just seemed I wanted more of an orange gold, not anything that was too yellow or too orange, so I kind of blended all 3 together. There is something so satisfying about applying like a good contrast layer over details like this shoulder pad. I don't know what it is that is just so much more satisfying than the lame base coat. Just love it. But now we get on to the fun task of highlighting. And again, I don't really know why I was this particular about things, but the ochre is like the mid-tone of the gold. And then I highlight with the pale sand in the shadow areas that I mapped out with the purple to start with the airbrush. And then I mixed in ice yellow for like the top sides of all the gold. And as I worked my way through this, it didn't really seem to matter all that much, but I leaned into more of the ice yellow. But when I come back in later, it does have a subtle shift. It's not quite as bright. And so just giving more of that contrast to the high sides. As you can see here, as I'm painting non-metallic metal gold over all of these parts, just show you on these lower wings here. The thing about non-metallic metal is it shouldn't really be something that's scary. It's just a matter of knowing where to place the highlights, knowing where to make it brighter, and at times it feels a little bit backwards. So doing the lower edges here maybe doesn't feel like where you should place a highlight, but you kind of do both. A chunkier bottom part of these wings, and then I just add more and more of the brighter color, in this case ice yellow. And then the other colors I showed was like the burgundy and the whole red. I'll just kind of enrich the shadows just a little bit after I highlight it. So we don't want just a completely flat ochre and ice yellow build up. It just doesn't really give that reflected light look. So you can see here I'm just doing like 3 areas of highlight. I have that very top edge, the mid part of it, and then the bottom edge that I'm just trying to hit in progressively smaller layers here. And finally, here's my favorite part of any non-metallic metal, is just the little dots of the bright, in this case almost pure ice yellow, just pinging little dots in all the brightest spots. And I know you might be thinking, this is a lot, this is taking a lot of time, and you'd be right. It took me almost 7 hours of just painting this gold on this model. Was it worth it? Well, we'll see if I can do better than the box art. Then it certainly is. Now on to the sword. Big Daddy Emperor's personal sword. So I want this sword to not necessarily steal the show, but it has to be vibrant, punchy, powerful, bright sword. So nothing better than reaching into the Chimera colors. So I start with just orange and base coat that out. And if you see a similar trend here, I'm just going to map the highlights with white. There's one thing with the box art that I don't think looks as good is the brightest spots aren't in the deepest part of the fire. So if you don't know fire physics or whatever, then the hot spots, the white, is where the fire originates. So it should be down in the base, down in the hottest part. So then I just take the warm yellow and I go over it, but I'm just trying to leave a little bit of that white to show the hottest spots. And this is a back and forth motion. It's not something you can really blend together in one pass. So this yellow does not have great coverage either, so it takes a few layers back and forth. And I just use this warm yellow, the orange, use a red and a smoke color from Vallejo, and just back and forth, upping the contrast. Bright white to near black. It's a very dark brown color smoke. So you can see here I'm just back and forth, adding more yellow, building those transitions. So here it is about 80% done. Need to go back in and refine some of the sculpted detail on the fire, blend it back in with the brighter spots, and then do a final bright white to the hottest spot. It's a little blurry here, but I'm taking this slight mix of the orange and the warm yellow together and just blending that color in. It's a little too stark. I want to slow down and show you a little bit how I'm doing the actual brush work. I'm going to dot with pure white in the deepest recesses. And here's the final result. So I've just spent 17 total hours just painstakingly highlighting and meticulously doing a non-metallic metal effect across this whole model. And it was kind of the plan at first. I wanted to do some strong shadows and some strong environmental lights. And I got to this point and I'd spend 17 hours. And that's not a small amount of time as I go through this. And then I decided, let's just knock it back and do some extra shadows. So I take Violet from Chimera and I thin it way down, like dirty paint water type of consistency. And I just slowly build up the shadows that I established very early in the process when I was just undercoating. I'm just trying to bring all the colors together, uniform the gold to the blue, the white, the parchment, and set the shadows. And then I come back in with the warm yellow. I'm calling this more of the sunlight and the torch light here. And I'm hitting this from above and from the torches. And this had an unexpected effect of turning the blue a little bit more green. And so that was a little bit of a back and forth, trying to keep that torch light intact, but also keep the blue looking blue and not green. So you can see here a quick pan around of all the effects. I also, not shown here, but I did orange for the sword as well. Getting to the home stretch here, but I went through and touched up all the areas that I knocked back with the filters. You can see here with pure ice yellow, just dotting all the corners, just trying to get those brightest highlights. All in all, this took me just over 4 hours to go through the whole model, touching up all the spots, hitting the bright whites of the gold, the blue armor, bringing it back around. You can see here I had some little specular highlights that I did on the orange. You can see a little bit of the chest. Now we're 23 hours in, and all I have left to do is the face. And here's the colors I used. Made some advanced flesh tone, some dark warm flesh, some elfric flesh, and then some warmer colors to bring some life back into the face. I had painted the eyes prior, but at this point it's just some contrast flesh tone or some express color from Vallejo. But I didn't really do a whole lot, but I wanted to make sure this face had some really stark contrast. The dour expression of Guilliman here kind of lends itself to having like a really harsh cheek shadow, I guess. And his stern look just doesn't really fit if you don't have some intense light here. So that big shadow on his cheek, I wanted to maintain as much as I could, but I didn't want to just leave it how it originally was. So see here, I draw some lines on the cheek and then the lower jawline, and then I just slowly glaze some mid-tones back in. I really wanted to keep that dark shadow as much as I could. I didn't want it to look like he had just a brown, smudge on his face, but I wanted that to look very stark, not quite non-metallic metal, stark black to white, but enough that he looked like he'd been through something, or this battle zone he's been in has been really, really hard, really tough battle. Not something where it's a day in parade type of thing. So you can see here I just picking out those very prominent eyebrows and those prominent features. Just trying to go slowly here. I don't want to do any major jumps, just thin paint, light touches, just slowly coaxing out those details, slowly bringing up the highlights, and then glazing it back, a little back and forth. So here I am with that advanced flesh tone, just glazing a little bit of a transition, trying to keep that really dark patch, making it look like shadow as opposed to a black smudge on his face. Just slowly teasing out the highlights. See, on this side, I left it a little bit more stark. Just trying to softly glaze a little bit from there. A little bit thinner paint than I normally use. Just slowly bringing it back. And here I show you how thin this paint is. Look, I use it on my nail, and I forget to dab it onto a paper towel, so I flood the area and I realize it here. Dab it really quick, and then come back in and softly, while the paint is still wet, try to keep it from pooling here. This is again just a light glaze, working those highlights, transitioning from the mid-tone back to the highlight, just trying to blend those colors together. Last and certainly not least, the black rimming. It was very satisfying after 24 hours of painting. Not all in one session, not all in one day, but 24 hours total. And this is the final moment. So, what do you think? Which one is better? I personally like mine, but I might be a little biased. And I can say with good confidence that most little orcs would appreciate mine more. There's cool lights, there's better contrast, and it just overall looks badass. Let me know what you think in the comments, like, and subscribe. All jokes aside, Callan, if you watch this, I love you, buddy. I know you love the model, and I hope as you look at it and as you see this, it inspires you to try difficult things and not be afraid to fail as you learn to do amazing things. I said, I love you, buddy.